In 1995, a French philosopher named Pierre Hadot gave a name to a mental exercise he found scattered across a Roman emperor's private notebook. An exercise the emperor performed so often that Hadot considered it the key to his entire philosophy. Hadot called it the view from above. Marcus Aurelius never used that phrase. He simply did it, night after night, somewhere on the Danube frontier, in a tent lit by a single lamp, while running an empire that was failing on every front. He describes rising, in his imagination, until the whole of human life is visible beneath him at once. Every army, every wedding, every funeral, every argument, all of it shrinking into a single, ordinary pattern. And here is the strange part. He did not do this to feel small. He did it to feel free. Today, we're going to walk through the actual mechanics of the view from above. Not the poetic idea people quote on a plaque, but the specific mental sequence Marcus used, in his own words, to make an unbearable problem instantly bearable, and how you can run the same sequence tonight, on whatever is sitting on your own chest right now. Marcus had reasons to need this trick more than almost anyone in history. He ruled roughly a fifth of the known world, which meant that every provincial dispute, every fraying alliance, every insult traded between senators eventually found its way to him personally, and he could not simply walk away from any of it the way a private citizen could. But notice what he actually reached for when the weight became too much. Not wine, not distraction, not a longer walk in a nicer garden. He reached for a specific act of imagination, a way of using his own mind's scale to make his problems match it, instead of the other way around. He built this into a repeatable exercise with distinct steps, and if you follow the notebook in order, you can find every one of those steps still intact. 5 separate moves, each one shrinking a different dimension of the same problem, until what started out unbearable simply stops fitting the space it needs to feel that way. 1. The mind's large room. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have the power to strip off many superfluities which trouble you and are wholly in your own judgment. And you will make a large room at once for yourself by embracing in your thought the whole universe, grasping ever-continuing time and pondering the rapid change in the parts of each object. How brief the interval from birth to dissolution, and the time before birth a yawning gulf, even as the period after dissolution equally boundless." Read the first half of that sentence carefully, because it contains the whole premise the rest of the technique is built on. Many of your troubles are not facts about the world. They are facts about your judgment of the world, which means they live inside you, in whatever room your mind currently occupies. And a small room makes every object inside it feel enormous. A single rude email fills a small room completely. A single delay, a single slight, a single bad meeting. In a cramped enough space, any one of them can occupy your entire field of vision. Marcus's proposed fix is not to fight the object. It is to enlarge the room. Embrace the whole universe in your thought, and that same email is now one object among an almost unfathomable number of them, most of which you will never so much as glimpse. Picture someone replaying a single awkward sentence they said at dinner 3 hours ago, turning it over and over until it fills their whole evening. The sentence has not changed size. Their room has shrunk around it. The technique does not ask them to prove the sentence didn't matter. It asks them to widen the room until the sentence, unchanged, simply takes up less of it. The same way a boulder that fills a closet becomes a pebble on a beach without losing a single ounce of its actual weight. Or picture someone checking a work inbox for the 4th time in an hour, certain that one unanswered message is a crisis, until they widen the room enough to remember how many thousands of other unanswered messages are sitting, at that exact moment, in exactly as many other inboxes, each one feeling, to someone else, just as urgent as theirs. 2. Shrinking the map. Having stated the principle, Marcus immediately puts it to work on physical space. In the same notebook, Marcus Aurelius put it even more starkly. Asia and Europe are corners in the universe. Every sea, a drop in the universe. Mount Athos, a clod of earth in the universe. Every instant of time, a pinprick of eternity. Asia and Europe were not abstractions to the man writing this. They were the two continents his empire actually straddled, the entire known political world of his time, the stage on which every war, every treaty, every rebellion he dealt with actually played out. And he calls them corners. Not because they were unimportant to the people living in them, plainly they were not, but because size is only ever relative to whatever you're comparing it against, and Marcus is choosing, deliberately, to compare his empire against the universe rather than against his own front door. Mount Athos was, in the ancient world, a byword for a mountain so large that engineers once seriously proposed carving Alexander the Great's face into its side. Marcus calls it a clod of earth. Picture someone in the middle of a heated dispute with a neighbor about 6 inches of fence line. It's the kind of argument that can occupy someone's thoughts for a solid week, generating angry, rehearsed speeches in the shower and long imagined confrontations in the car. Now place that same 6 inches of fence line on Marcus's map, next to Mount Athos, next to the entire Mediterranean, next to the whole of Asia and Europe. The fence line does not disappear. It simply returns to its actual size, which was never the size the argument had made it feel. 3. Shrinking the clock. Marcus performs the identical move on time that he just performed on space, and it is, if anything, the harder of the two to sit with. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Of man's life, his time is a point, his existence a flux, his sensation clouded, his body's entire composition corruptible, his vital spirit an eddy of breath, his fortune hard to predict, his fame uncertain." A point. Not a short line, not a brief chapter, a point, the geometric object with no length at all, dropped somewhere inside a timeline that runs, in both directions, further than the mind can actually picture. This is not written as consolation. It reads, on first pass, almost cruel. Your fame is uncertain, your fortune is hard to predict, your very sensation is clouded, and the span in which any of it happens is a point. But notice what Marcus does with this observation elsewhere in the same notebook. He does not use it to argue that nothing matters. He uses it to argue that the specific things eating at you today, the promotion you didn't get, the argument you're still replaying, the year that feels like it's dragging, are themselves also points. And points this small cannot possibly deserve the amount of a life you are currently spending on them. Picture someone lying awake at midnight, recounting every year still owed on a mortgage, every year left in a difficult job, treating the remaining decades like an unbearable weight stacked on their chest all at once. Marcus's clock does not shorten that mortgage by a single payment. It simply reminds the person doing the counting that the whole stack, every year of it, is still only a point against everything that was here before they arrived, and everything that continues after they leave. And Marcus is careful to include his own fame in that same shrinking point, not just his own suffering. The emperor whose face was struck onto coins across 3 continents describes his own name, in the very same notebook, as something a future age will not even recognize. If the fame of Rome's ruler is itself only a point, then whatever reputation is currently keeping you up at night was never going to be the exception. 4. The actual exercise. So far, this has all been argument, reasons why your troubles are smaller than they feel. But Marcus does not stop at argument. He gives himself an actual imaginative drill to run, a specific thing to picture, not just a fact to accept. Marcus gives himself the actual instruction. If you could be suddenly caught up into the air and could look down upon human life and see all its variety, you would disdain it, seeing at the same time how great a company of beings, in the air and in the ether, encompasses you. This is the moment the view from above stops being a metaphor and becomes an instruction. Marcus is telling himself, quite literally, to picture his own body lifted off the ground, rising until the entire pattern of human activity is visible beneath him at once. Not one house, one street, one argument, but the whole crawling, churning mass of it, all happening simultaneously, none of it aware of any of the others. The word he reaches for afterward is disdain, and it is worth being precise about what that word is doing, because it is easy to mishear it as contempt for other people. Marcus does not disdain the people below him. He is, at that exact moment, one of them, running an empire full of exactly this same churn. What he disdains is his own habit of treating whichever single piece of that churn happens to be closest to him, his piece, his argument, his slight, his bad morning, as though it deserved a different category of seriousness than everyone else's piece deserves. From high enough up, every argument looks like every other argument. Every triumphant morning looks like every other triumphant morning. Picture actually running this. Close your eyes for 30 seconds and build the image deliberately. Not a vague sense of smallness, but an actual aerial view. Rooftops shrinking to a grid, cars to specks, your own specific problem becoming one indistinguishable dot inside a country full of other dots, each one convinced, from the ground, that it is the only one that matters. Marcus did not need to imagine most of this. Campaigning on the Danube, he had actually stood on high ground and watched entire armies reduced to moving lines on a hillside, which may be exactly why the image came so naturally to a man who had never seen a photograph taken from an airplane. 5. Coming back down. The view from above is not a place Marcus recommends staying. He always comes back down, and what he brings back with him, each time, is not detachment from life, but a clearer read of its actual shape. In the words of Marcus Aurelius, look upon earthly things below as if from some place above them. Herds, armies, farms, weddings, divorces, births, deaths, noise of law courts, lonely places, divers foreign nations, festivals, mournings, marketplaces, a mixture of everything and an order composed of contraries. Read that list slowly, because it is doing something specific. It puts a wedding and a divorce, a birth and a death, a festival and a mourning in the same breath, on the same level, none of them singled out as the exception to the rule. This is the payoff of the whole exercise. From ground level, your own wedding feels like the center of the universe, and your own funeral feels like the end of it. From above, both are simply part of the pattern, an order composed of contraries, as reliable and as unremarkable as day following night. That is not Marcus telling you your wedding doesn't matter. It is Marcus telling you that its weight was never the problem. Your isolation of it from everything else that has ever happened was. Picture someone returning from a genuinely difficult week, a health scare, a fight with someone they love, a professional failure that felt, at the time, like the whole of their life narrowing to a single bad outcome. The view from above does not erase any of that. It sets it back down inside the same list Marcus wrote 2,000 years ago. The marriages and the divorces, the births and the deaths, the courts and the markets, and lets the person see their own week as one entry in a pattern that has run, unbroken, for as long as there have been people to run it. The problem does not shrink because it was never real. It shrinks because it was never alone. So the view from above is not, in the end, a trick for feeling nothing. It is a trick for feeling the right amount. Marcus built it in 5 moves, and you can run all 5 in under a minute, anywhere, with nothing but a closed set of eyes. Widen the room until the trouble takes up less of it. Shrink the map until today's argument sits next to Mount Athos and gets no bigger than a fence line. Shrink the clock until the mortgage, the difficult year, the whole remaining decade collapses back into a single point against everything that came before you and everything that comes after. Rise, in imagination, until the entire churning pattern of human life is visible beneath you at once, and let your own piece of it lose its false claim to being the exception. And then, without fail, come back down. Not into detachment, but into the same ordinary list of weddings and funerals and market days that Marcus wrote out in his own tent, on a night when the empire he ruled was, by any measure, coming apart at the edges. He never wrote the view from above to make his readers stop caring. He wrote it because a man who ran 1/5 of the known world needed, more than almost anyone, a reliable way to remember which of his problems actually deserved the room he was giving them. Tonight, whatever is currently filling your entire field of vision, take 30 seconds, rise above it, and see how much smaller the room gets when you finally look at the whole of it instead of just the one corner you happen to be standing in. If this gave you a way to shrink whatever is sitting on your chest right now, Subscribe to Above Average, where we explore the psychology and philosophy of the thinkers who saw what most people never do. Thanks for watching.